one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice.
Welcome to the One Mic, One Voice show, building the collective conscious, a show that is created to give space where your voice, ideas, and informed opinions can be heard, appreciated, and debated. I am Michael Eric Owens.
And I'm Deshaun Thornton. I'm liking how you sound over there, man. You sound very calm, very mellow.
You know, man, it's one of those days. Yeah, smooth jazz sounds. It's one of those days, man. I mean, it's Sunday, right? We got a little overcast and, coming to the end of the weekend and just feeling a little mellow, really.
You sound very mentally well.
Oh, do I? So, okay. Yeah, we had a little drop down on the volume there.
That's what my man Pump up the volume, Richard.
But, man, today's title, It's All Mental.
It's all in the mind.
It's all in the mind. And, we want to look at mental illness and the issues associated with that in this episode. And we have, just throughout this country, we hear it so much, D, with what happened in the church shooting in Texas, right? We hear it so much with Las Vegas.
Yeah.
We hear
example after example.
And I don't know whether we've gotten to the point where we take mental illness seriously. And the reason why I say that, if you look at not just Oklahoma, although Oklahoma is like atrocious and trying to deal with these mental health issues and all the cuts that they're making to the services for the mentally ill, those that are challenged with these. And we're going to find out today that you might fall into this category, even if you don't know it, right?
Exactly.
We got to remove the stigma. We'll be dealing with that a little bit. But across the country, brother, I mean, services are being cut for, some of the most vulnerable in our society.
I mean, we look at, like you said, across the country, and we see communities who need help and are getting shortchanged or just not exposed to programs who can deal with the issues. Take the magnitude that it's going to take to really to end in some type of change, because this is some type of ongoing thing. It's not like you're sad today and maybe tomorrow, you're just going to get it all together overnight. And so you need people who are also committed to the cause and who are committed to really working with families and with individuals to finish the race with them and alongside of them.
And you deal with this on a one-on-one basis more than me, when you're dealing with our young people, and also when you're doing your thing and with domestic abuse.
Yeah,
I know you see, man, you seeing from young to old, and so your insight and your observation is going to be critical as we have this discussion. But I think we see it every day in 45, while it is humorous and it's easy for me to laugh about it, but I'm not the only one that thinks this gentleman has some chronic mental illnesses.
Yes, we've had top scholars who major and study in psychology and brain function and all of these different areas, and they are now coming out and giving their analysis of what they think are some of the symptoms and signs of maybe some mental illness diagnosis that he may fall under the category of.
Absolutely. Let's check out this video, and you be the judge.
With all the psychologists that I've spoken to in different meetings, and I belong to institutes and I go to different meetings, we all agree that there is something really wrong. There's a mental pervasive disorder characterized by self-interest, aggression, instability, lying, stealing, cheating, and grandiosity, and it actually has a deteriorating course. So he would just get worse. Usually someone with a narcissistic personality disorder is driven by self-interest, and they're pretty destructive and can be untreatable. For the most part, they're one of the most difficult personality disorders to treat, and the reason for that is because they don't take interpretation, they don't take feedback. So that's a very dangerous thing for a candidate to have, or characteristic for a candidate to have, that they're not exchanging, they're not taking in reality. So there's an sort of an unrealistic way that someone like this operates in the world according to their own self-interest. I saw in the news that he doesn't feel he needs daily briefings of what's going on in the world with security. So there you see the grandiosity. There's no other president, I believe, that wouldn't need daily briefings. I mean, the security of America and the citizens are at stake, but he doesn't feel he needs that. And then followed by the fact that he's smart. There's the narcissism. So there's the all-knowing grandiosity. I don't need to learn anything. I know best, and nobody gets to tell him anything. And I think that that's what's dangerous with this kind of personality. He has found himself in a position where he is able to be omnipotent, which is also very dangerous with someone like him, because now he thinks he has absolute control, and that he's intimidated enough people to be scared of him, and he can do what he wants. The most important thing to be concerned about is the impulsivity. When he gets slighted and enraged, he will act out. He will have access to the nuclear codes. And with his level of impulsivity and instability, that is dangerous for the country and dangerous for the free world.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, she pretty much described him like a child, you know?
Yeah, yeah. That's a lot to digest.
It is. One of the main things she kept saying is that he doesn't take feedback. He doesn't listen to anybody. We see that time after time when he's telling everybody else about about what's real and what's not real, and he gets to decide that for everybody else, discounting everybody else's opinion or stance on it.
Yeah, impulsivity. I mean, he is a guy that he has no control over his impulses, and he's easily, I think he's easily upset. He's easily
irritable.
Yeah, irritable. He's easily driven to anger. And I remember when she talked about the narcissistic personality, driven by self-interest. This is a guy that has done this all his life. It's been all about him, all about his world. He's had people answering to him, people kowtowing to him. This whole thing about the apprentice, being in charge, telling people that you're fired, being seen as this great businessman, this self-made billionaire that did it all himself. And I remember him saying, I alone can solve these problems. Mm-hmm. You know,
that's pretty bold.
Yeah, I mean, who would say that? I mean, if you were not dealing with, as she talked about, these with a personality disorder, right? With narcissistic tendencies. I mean, and he's always this grandiosity, this idea of it's going to be great, it's going to be amazing. It's so big. It's so, it's like never seen before. Like his election, I won more electoral votes than ever before. And then when they say, well, actually, President Obama got more than you. Oh, I'm talking Republicans. Well, no. Actually, I think it was George H. Bush got more than you, George H.W. Bush, or one of the Bushes. And he was like, well, somebody just told me this. It's like, that's feedback, right? That's when you say, wow, I guess I'm wrong, right? I guess I got the wrong information. But no, the personality disorder, the narcissistic tendency simply says, no, I'm always right, you're wrong.
And so, Mike, to your point, there are other professionals out there who are saying that President Donald Trump does not fit the criteria for mental illness. This guy, Alan Francis, says, like you said, he kind of says these things as a way to stir up the crowd. It's kind of repetitive, but they draw up emotion. And so that's the reason why. He says that they wrote these things down in the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Illnesses as a descriptor of something that was going on in the clinical trial, but not that it would be used against our president as ammunition to discredit him and the decisions that he's made as the leader of the free world. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, it's dangerous because, if you would be honest with yourself, I don't know, you might be dealing with depression, or you might be dealing with anxiety, or you might be dealing with, personality disorder, bipolarism, or something. If you would be honest with yourself, you would say, I need, not only do I need assistance, but I need people around me that understand my illness and can help me deal with life, right? I mean, I'm not saying that I'm not a proponent for saying that everyone needs to take something that a pill is going to cure everything in your life. I'm not here to say that. But what I'm saying, sometimes you need some medication, right? And sometimes you need, that sort of support circle around you, whether it's therapists, whether it's family members that can say, you manic, right? Yeah. I mean, really, you need to. We need to talk because you're manic right now, right? Are you taking your medication, out of concern and love for someone? The danger is that me being a person that might have a mental disorder or illness, disability, however you want to define it, my circle is small. Here is a man that, his circle is large, right? And we hear the things coming out of his mouth, man. I just think it's so dangerous. And I think this answers a lot of the questions that people say, well, man, how can he say that? Or how can he keep lying like that? How can he? The man has a mental illness.
And at his level of status, may be hard for him to admit.
Oh,
we're
absolutely.
Going to get into that next, the stigmatization of people who suffer in silence.
Absolutely. He could never. The narcissistic, part of who he is could never admit that. Folks, listen, that's 45 and out down the road if we didn't give you the title to that. But we're going to get into this thing called mental illness, and we want to hear from you. Check in with us and let us know your thoughts. You might be dealing with a mental illness. This is a platform for you to talk about. We listen, folks. We're not in the position to judge. We're in a position to love. And so, folks, listen. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Josh K.
And I am Leah Marie.
And when we listen to podcasts, we always listen to
One mic, one voice.
You can change the world, it's your choice.
Your choice.
This is Elijah Bailey.
This is Richard Taflin.
From The Elijah Bailey Show, bringing you all the content that you could ever desire about anime, manga, comic books, martial arts, fitness, and more.
You can find us at Elijah Bailey Show on the official Facebook page, and also Elijah Bailey Show without the W on Twitter and Instagram.
Make sure to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and rate on iTunes and Podbean.
Welcome back, folks. Getting a little deeper into this, let's just take let's take a listen to an individual that's talking about their situation as they deal with their mental challenges.
When it comes to mental illness, just because you can't see the pain doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's a touchy subject, so much so that people struggling often feel isolated. But the truth is, they're far from alone.
Vicki Patterson had a nightmare for a childhood.
I was suicidal from the time I was about 11 to 13, somewhere along in that age range, until right at 55.
As a child, Vicki was molested, used in pornography, and raised in an unfit home. The abuse and neglect left her with many unanswered questions.
I knew I was different. I knew it through elementary school, I knew it through junior high, I knew it through high school. I knew it raising my children, but I didn't know what it was. It was like a piece of a puzzle missing.
It wasn't until she was 55 years old that Vicki was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, PTSD, and depression, the missing piece to her puzzle. Vicki's case, although extreme, is not uncommon. 1 in 4 Americans experiences mental illness. That's 61.5 million people suffering, often in silence.
I think that if it was anything but mental illness, we'd be talking about an epidemic. 1 in 4 people you know is most families. Mom, dad, 2 kids. So someone in that family's life is going to be touched by mental illness.
Mental illness is defined as a wide range of conditions that affect mood, thinking, and behavior.
They may have difficulty getting out of bed. They may have thought distortion. They might have a lot of anxiety about things. A smaller population of individuals will have more chronic mental illness, and for them it could be very significant. It could mean inability to keep a job. It could mean family falling apart, or it even could mean suicide and lead to death.
The following are signs that you or a loved one may want to speak to a medical or mental health professional. Excessive worrying, extreme sadness, problems concentrating, mood changes, avoiding social activities, changes in sleeping and eating habits, substance abuse, or thoughts of suicide. As you can see, suffering from a mental illness is hard enough, but overcoming the misconceptions about your disease can be even harder.
We've been shamed, we've been put down so much that we blame ourselves. We are the problem.
But as Dr. Bill Fole, a professor of school and clinical psychology at Western Kentucky University, explains,
blaming somebody for a mental illness is a way to push them further into the problem rather than getting them to seek help.
He went on to say that seeking help is often the hardest step toward recovery for 2 reasons: fear and ignorance.
People are afraid of the unknown. They're afraid that they have something that's, 1, not treatable, which is not probably true, and 2, that it's always lived in the culture that you don't need treatment for these, you just need to get over it. So you put those together, it's a pretty powerful message.
But there is hope.
The woman you met at the beginning of this story is proof that you can recover from mental illness. Vicki Patterson is now a peer specialist here at the Wellness Center of Bowling Green, where she's able to share her story in hopes of helping others.
My biggest goal has been to give back. I don't want to see young people going through the mental illness and it take them to 55 years old to come out of it.
Because life after mental illness,
it's a freedom. You're in a prison with mental illness. Your mind is in a prison just as much as if I was in the jail. I was in a prison. I am free. I am free to be who I'm going to be.
The first step toward recovery is a simple trip to your doctor, who can prescribe medication to cope with your symptoms or refer you to a specialist. Here in South...
All right, folks. Vicki Patterson, I believe wasn't
Patterson. Man, very inspiring story.
Yeah,
I mean, especially for those, and we mentioned this back in our earliest episode about people who go out throughout the lifespan, 50, 60, 70 years old, and are still lost, like children. And so, as Vicky noted, it's good to notice the signs and be able to surround yourself with people who can get you on that pathway to recovery.
Absolutely. And, you're so right. I mean, building that support system and acknowledging, coming out of the shadows, right?
She had a lot of trauma. Stuff she just could not talk about, being sexually abused, used in pornography. These are not things that people can come up and talk to you about in normal conversation without them looking at you strange or,
Absolutely. Speaking of her abuse, neglect, PTSD, depression, borderline personality disorder, how she felt so shamed, the shame that went along with trying, cooking, and, even talk about that. But these adverse childhood experiences, these, and I want us, to focus on trauma, because as we get more deeper into the show, we're going to see that, man, you might not think you've had some trauma in your childhood, but many of us have dealt with trauma in our childhood, and this adverse childhood experiences, including abuse and neglect, they may also include household dysfunction, such as witnessing domestic violence or growing up with family members who have substance use disorders, physical neglect, emotional neglect. And you can actually take an ACE test. You can go out, all you have to do is Google it. You can take an ACE test, and it's a tally of the different types of abuses, neglect, and other hallmarks of a rough childhood. According to, get this, folks, to the Adverse Childhood Experience study, the rougher your childhood, the higher your score is likely to be, and the higher your risk for later health problems. I'm going to encourage you to go out and do that. I did it. So I want to encourage you to go out there. It made me think about a lot of things that I have not thought about, D, when it comes to our childhood, right? Sometimes that stuff seems like normal, right? And then you like, nah. You look back, you like, nah, that wasn't, nah. What was going on wasn't really normal, right?
Yeah, like Vicky explained, she noticed it early on throughout her childhood and throughout, adulthood even, that she was not like other people. And there are a lot of other people who feel like that. Just for a second, let's go back and define what mental health is.
Go ahead.
Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. Mental health is important at every stage of life, from childhood and adolescence through adulthood. So, Mike, like you're saying, these things are going to continue to be on our minds, no matter how hard we try to suppress them. Subconsciously, they're there, pulling at us in some ways, navigating the way we act and behave. We don't even know it sometimes. Absolutely. So, it's important to just educate yourself, first of all, about what mental health options are available to you, what things are appealing to you. There are over 100 different type of therapies and psychomodalities. So, there are lots of options. So if it's something that you are specifically looking for, there's many and plenty of resources out there.
Let's talk for a minute, brother, about some early warning signs of having a mental health issue. Eating or sleeping too much or too late.
Yeah, stand up late. Watching TV for no reason. Eat a Netflix 20 hours straight.
20 hours.
Don't even know why. Right. Something is on the mind, brother. You gotta release that. Okay, how about pulling away from people and usual activities? Can't show up to the.
I battle with this because, man, I just don't like being around a lot of people. You know what I mean?
And is it like for extended periods of time?
Man, listen, I could probably not be around people forever. It's just to me like, well, let me just say this. I don't like being around people that are not in my circle. Let me say like that, right? Because I feel like I'm being force. I feel like I have to somehow blend in. I feel it brings me anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I do battle with, hey man, won't you come? This is going on, and I'm like, man, you folks don't know me,
right?
You know what I mean? And all you really trying to do is get up in my business. So there's some paranoia there too, as well. And I'm not ashamed to say it, man. I'm very comfortable in my skin. And so, yeah, I do kind of think about that sometimes.
I kind of take that one too, more in a sense of like protecting and appreciating my own time.
Yeah.
And so, like, if there's something going on, it's like, man, I mean,
yeah,
I could, but I'm not. But it's like, just having value for your time and for yourself when you do need those moments, just to be, reflecting.
Yeah, and that's the hell. You put it in a more healthier way than me. I think I might just have a mental disorder in that area, having low or no energy.
Well, that may just be like a life problem sometimes.
That's right.
Like, man, I don't want to do jack.
That's
I don't have the energy for nothing.
That's right, man. I don't know if that's an indicator. I'm in trouble.
Smoking, drinking, or using drugs more than usual.
Yeah, using drugs more than usual.
PSA.
Okay.
Just say no.
Just say
drugs.
Just say no. Feeling helpless or hopeless.
And I think that is the biggest stem sometimes for people who just don't have anything to look forward to.
Yeah.
Nothing to spark the day.
Yeah.
And so feeling helpless and hopeless is a seed planted to blossom all those other things that make you feel, kind of worthless and what am I here for type of thing.
And a lot of that, going back to those adverse childhood experiences, as a child, if you told you're never going to amount to nothing, your daddy wasn't good, you're not going to be good. That can lead a person into depression, into also hopelessness. And we have a lot of people out there that simply think nothing's good is going to happen to me, and it's all related to the trauma that they witnessed when they were growing up. It's
there's a lot of science on this, the effects of domestic violence on children, and how the brain is shaped and made in relation to how that child is exposed to domestic violence.
Oh yeah,
and so go check that stuff. There's so many factors,
and I think one of the biggest lessons to kind of take out of this show is, where am I at? What am I dealing with, right? And not so much of this periphery view of the situation or of our country or what someone else is dealing with. What are you dealing with? What am I dealing with? What am I trying to hide from myself? What am I afraid to tell others about what I'm dealing with because I feel like I'm going to be judged, or with the mental health stigma that exists out there? Oh man, it's a tough situation, but I think only if we are honest with ourselves, then can we begin to look at some sort of solution or help or services. And I will also say that being black is a whole nother thing too.
Yeah, so there are different approaches you take, and I think a great deal of cultural competence comes into play when you have clinicians who are trying to help the African American community or people from other communities, understanding who you're dealing with, that culture, that person, that,
because we don't want to talk about it.
Those stereotypes and types of things that go on, and especially
Mookie is just
he's just crazy.
Yeah, Mookie just crazy.
Man, y'all be rocking, man. He done jumped up off the deep end, as they say.
You know what I'm saying? He just needs to stop all smoking all that weed. Get in all that trouble.
Funny because we have these generalized ways of dealing with helping others through situations. So we'll say something like that, man. Just, hey, man, just chill out, man. Why don't you just be good every once in a while, man? Dang, man, you ain't tired of your mama crying, man?
Yeah, like Mookie can just fix it himself.
Don't get it, man.
And so let's take a listen to the impact of slavery and other traumas as it relates to black folks.
When you look at the historical experience of African Americans in the United States, you have to start with the experience of slavery and the vestiges of slavery in terms of the trauma associated with it. And I think that blacks continue to experience trauma in certain ways, and certainly with respect to those who live in urban communities that are infested with drugs or that are particularly violent. Those are traumatic situations that they experience on a daily basis. Certainly, as we've seen in recent events, interactions with the police can be, again, particularly traumatic. So when you talk about mental illness in the black community, I think you have to begin with the experience of trauma and how trauma continues to abound in their experiences and in their daily lives. I think that what happens for a lot of individuals is that they suffer in silence with respect to having a mental illness. And so what I mean by that, in the greater society, there's certainly a lot of stigma associated with mental illness. It's sort of antithetical to the American ethic, which is to, be strong and courageous, to pull yourself up by the bootstrap, to weather the storm, etc. I think the second part of that, point is what's happening at the community level or the society level. And I think what happens is that within the black community, I think that, again, that ethic about what it means to be strong and courageous is particularly pronounced because of trying to, combat those forces like discrimination or racism. And, it just adds to the burden of, sort of what it means to survive. And so then the person who's struggling with the mental illness is perhaps not embraced or, warmly accepted because of their struggles. I remember as a young person growing up, I used to hear about the person who was quote unquote sent down south. I used to wonder what that meant, and it wasn't until I got older that I became more knowledgeable of the fact that that person was struggling with a mental illness or perhaps substance abuse. From a historical perspective, there's been a lot of emphasis in the black community, particularly in black families, on keeping your problems close to the vest in the home. You don't share what's going on with outsiders. No one can treat you as best as your family can. You bring all your burdens and your problems to your family. And if you do take it to any entity outside of your family, it's the black church. The church is really important in the black community. Make no mistake about it. It's a source of, sort of salvation and healing, and there's the whole collective support from, you get from your fellow churchgoers and that sort of thing. But I think also what has historically happened is that the church has been defined as the place to, sort of relieve your symptoms or to address your burdens, and so it stops there. And what I think needs to happen is that, first of all, I think pastors and lay ministers can be more trained in the signs and presentations of mental illness, but I think that the church could be sort of a triage unit, if you will, such that it identifies those who have needs, and it's that sort of first step and the sort of entree into care, but it shouldn't stop there. I believe that culturally competent care is critical to everything. If patients perceive that providers are inauthentic and do not care about their unique circumstances, then they're likely to be turned off. At a baseline, providers should understand the history of their neighborhoods, for example, or the history of the experience of African Americans and Latinos, such that they can put the clinical presentation into context and understand what unique factors are in play with respect to the clinical presentation and how that person is seeking to, survive and live in the world as an African American or a Latino. And so I think that the onus is on the provider to understand that context and to understand what it means for that person to live in that context.
Yeah. Wow. I want to, for a moment, just kind of focus on this idea of trauma as it relates to slavery. And I think for so many people that don't experience this, that are outside of the black community, and not everyone says this, D, get over slavery. It was a long time ago. So I'm not generalizing this to other ethnicities, but I'm saying there is a segment of the population that seems to think slavery was a long time ago. What does it have to do with anything now? My ancestors didn't have slaves. Well, you don't know that, but you can say that. I don't have slaves, so why are we still talking about slavery? And I think for me, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but for me, it is it's not necessarily, but to some degree it is, the subjugation and the chattel slavery of holding someone as property. To me, it's more of the institution of second-class citizenship, of no rights, of a system, a slave system, a Jim Crow system, a convict leasing system, a mass incarceration system that carries out the same sort of goals in the modern era that causes trauma, police brutality, right? It's the same sort of thing. You can't distinguish, and I think what people try to do is distinguish between what happened so long ago. But folks, it's the same system, right? And so every black child growing up will be reminded of that system. Now get this, they will be reminded of it, and then they will more than likely experience it. So how can we say, oh man, you just need to get over that?
You can't, because it matters. All of it matters. I think the thing is that we have lost the value of the whole story. Like we take the segments and parts that make us feel nice and run with those. But the fact of the matter is that even in my experience with black children, even though they have not experienced slavery firsthand, they still suffer the consequences of the systems that Mike just spoke about, that upheld the Jim Crowism and all these other things that still kind of play themselves out in today's society. And so they are confronted daily with that reality because of it happening so long ago. It still has signs and symptoms of itself today. I mentioned in an earlier episode about the two kids I heard talking about skin tone and being light skin versus dark skin. That's a psychological issue there, in reference to preference, white versus black or light versus dark. And so what does that come from? And so I can't say that that's because we've always loved each other's skin colors. I can't say that's because we've always agreed on whose skin was the best, the prettiest, the most appealing. So I mean, there are always signs of those things still incorporated into the new society, even though they happened, so long ago.
Yeah, I mean, man, you said a mouthful, brother. The child that's in elementary school, that's in social studies, that reads about Jim Crow and sees a black water fountain and a white one, and learns about Martin Luther King and the fight for civil rights, and sees the video of dogs attacking black people. What message? And they return to a community that in a lot of cases is blighted, a food desert. Homes are boarded up. What message does that send to that young child? Does it to me, it sends a message of hopelessness.
Yeah, it does not reinforce positivity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We do have a comment here. It says, being poor and hungry and cold as a child, then going through the same things in the military, made me discover that at age 47, I found out I had PTSD. Wow. Adverse childhood experiences, right?
I have another comment here. Says, amazing sister and friend of mine was diagnosed with bipolar at the age 12. She is now late 30s. She cured her bipolar disorder with daily self-care ritual practices such as neuro-linguistic programming, yoga, meditation, and has never needed pharmaceutical brain chemical altering medications. From a holistic perspective and medical background, I do not recommend seeking medications as a first resort. As human beings, we have the ability to heal ourselves with proper self-care. I have also battled with anxiety and depression and am healing myself of that daily with internal spiritual work, meditation, yoga, writing, positive affirmations, being expressive, creative, etc. But don't get me wrong, some people may benefit from medications depending on the individual. And also says, and plant medicine.
Well, I mean, that's great advice. Thanks for both of those comments. I mean, PTSD, man, is a deep issue that we're finding out that our veterans are coming back and they're dealing with, but it's connected to a lot of other trauma in folks' lives as well. And I always believe that we should do everything in our own power to take care of our mental health. But, you know, sometimes as the comment that we receive, medication is the only option. But be proactive, right, in your own mental health, and because I think once you recognize something and you come like to this realization,
right, that moment of truth,
man, then you can be on your journey to living a healthy life, right? But we have to come out of the shadows, D. We got to pay some bills right quick. Folks, we getting just a little bit deeper. Keep your comments coming. We love hearing from you. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back.
This is Elijah Bailey.
This is Richard Taplin
from The Elijah Bailey Show, bringing you all the content that you could ever desire about anime, manga, comic books, martial arts, fitness, and more.
You can find us at Elijah Bailey Show on the official Facebook page, and also Elijah Bailey Show without the W on Twitter and Instagram.
Make sure to follow, subscribe, like, comment, and rate on iTunes and Podbean.
This is DT of the One Mic One Voice podcast. Just want to let you guys know you can go over to iTunes and search us at One Mic One Voice, and be sure to rate and review our episodes. Let us know about any feedback that you have and what you enjoy about the episodes. Also, you can go over to Stitcher, where you can get the latest and freshest episodes of our podcast streamed directly to your smartphone or iPad. No downloading or syncing. How cool. Real smooth. Also, we'd just like to take the time to thank you for your time and for your energy and for spending time with us as we discuss the historical record of our time.
This is Dr. Laura Gillette, and when I listen to podcasts, I always listen to the One Mic, One Voice show.
Welcome back, folks. I want to share some staggering numbers with you. 1.2 million individuals living with mental illness sit in a jail or prison each year. 1.2 million. And often this involves petty criminal offenses, jaywalking, disorderly conduct, trespassing, getting caught with a blunt. You know what I mean? That's in the vernacular right there. But and it says here that it gives a breakdown of that it talks about the states and access to mental health, and Oklahoma is number 49.
Access to mental health.
49. And they talk about per 100,000 people, Oklahoma locks up 700 people. Okay, as compared to Maine, which locks up 153. The only worse is Louisiana, and we know the history of Louisiana when it comes to locking folks up. They're at 816 per 100,000. We are 49. Wow.
Said we got a place for you. I mean, help you deal with this, but I got a place for you.
You know, it's like
got no resources for you, but I got a place.
I'm gonna lock you up. And they say it to treat a person a year with mental illness is $2,000. To treat a person incarcerated is $20,000. The math doesn't even add up. The math tells you that if you properly treat mental illness, it will help your state revenue, right?
We take those numbers and look at college tuition, you know.
Exactly.
Serve a better purpose and sending those folks off to be able to do something with their lives as opposed to spending them behind bars.
It makes no sense. And you know, we want to take a look at this. These are two separate accounts of two people dealing with mental illness. These are two black folks
snapping the chain.
Snapping the chain. Take a listen.
Because sometimes when you have a mental illness, you feel so different. It's like you're not even, you know, you feel so disconnected. Like I can't even feel like other people feel, you know. When I would burn myself, the sound of the needle hitting my skin, I could hear my skin burning. It brings back that, okay, I am human, I am here because I can feel this pain.
To prison twice. Both times it was drug related. My first time going to prison is when they put all the labels on me. The psychiatrist will talk to you for 5 minutes and give you a diagnosis. And 9 chances out of 10, it's wrong. And you really shouldn't be there. Because that's taking the guy that has mental challenges and placing him with the guy that's just a straight up criminal. And you know what's going to happen. It's going to be trouble.
When I was 8 years old, my mother and father asked me who I wanted to live with, and I chose my father, and that really, really hurt her. at that time, she could not see that I was just a child. She just saw someone who she loved leaving her. And so as a result, I hated myself for it. It was a very traumatic event for me because I was like simultaneously disowned by both of my parents. So I think that is what really brought about the depression and the anxiety, because I couldn't understand why I was even born, why I was even here. And so I started to do a lot of self-mutilization. I looked really ugly and just disgusting. I just felt like I was just a worthless person.
I can say the trauma and the scars that we carry and the pain that we carry, and it's not okay to talk about it, you know, and I don't care, because the truth needs to come out.
I didn't want to die without having my voice heard. I felt like there was some reason why I had gone through the things that I had gone through, and there was some reason why I have depression, and people need to understand that. And I feel like that couldn't be something that could be written in a suicidal note.
So a lot of my experiences, I didn't realize how painful they were until I became mature. You know, and then I realized the hurt that I carried and the reason that I acted out in the way that I did.
This kind of self-hatred within ourselves, it's this perception that everybody else has around us. We've taken it in and we've kind of lived it out.
I feel like it's something wrong to admit that you have some form of mental challenge.
Taboo in the African American community it can be hard. Both my mother and father have that they're carrying that weight of our ancestors, of their parents and what they went through. So much mental damage was done to the African American community through slavery.
They'd much rather tell you that they got AIDS before they tell you that they have some form of mental illness. And it's just that much stigma.
When you're seeking help, when you're trying to become well, if you get a deep cut and you go to the doctor, you don't say, "Oh, that's a white thing. I'm not going to go to the doctor. My leg is bleeding and I'm losing feeling, but I'm not going to go to the doctor."
The first thing you have to do is remove the so-called stigma from it.
Because African American people need to really comprehend what a mental health illness is before we can proceed with any other, area of achievement in America.
Today I'm challenged because I suffer from major depression, and I'm fortunate to find a man that treated the depression and not just zonked me out so I wouldn't be a problem.
Everybody needs support. Everybody has that one person or that friend or whoever, relative, whoever, that they call on when they just need to talk to somebody. And that's really what therapy is.
And I finally started to believe that I had a chance, that I was going to be okay, after so many people told me I would never make it. And I do mean so many people.
The moment that I actually found out I was having a daughter, the first, I honestly cried. But now that I have my daughter, she is like my saving grace. I'm trying to focus on just letting Zion be a kid and focus on what I tell her, the words that I use. Because I think that we kind of forget that our kids, maybe our kids, but they're human beings in the making. And the things that we teach them, the things that we do to them has a huge effect on what they do in their adult lives and what they're going to do to their children.
Being a black man, it's very hard to show any kind of fear.
Wow. I mean, it's, man, those are two heart-wrenching stories. But there's so many. I mean, We didn't even call that the tip of the iceberg. There's so many out there, right, that are listening to us right now.
People affected.
How many?
6 million across the country.
I mean, 1.2 million locked up. I mean, when you think about what he said, you take a person that has a mental illness and put them in the same cell with somebody that's a criminal. Man, nothing good is going to come out of that. But that's what we do. We lock you up. We stigmatize you. And as black people, and I know this is in other cultures, so I'm just not being exclusive here. In black culture, we don't talk about it.
No.
We're afraid to talk about it. We're ashamed. And so we have this sister right here cutting herself because she feels like she's nothing, right? Goes back to those adverse childhood experience, the trauma of divorce, and the mother's rejection and the father's rejection. I don't know about you, man, but if your mama rejected your daddy, how you supposed to feel? That wouldn't make you depressed? That wouldn't make you, as a young child, question your value as a person? A woman that's been molested as a child? That wouldn't make her question her value, her worth? I mean, all of these things, dysfunction, yelling, screaming in the house, taking out the belt and just beating Johnny down. You don't think Johnny's going to go like, man, what? I know I did something wrong, but what? And start questioning his ability and his value as a human. Damaged people damage other people.
That's true.
I'm just going to keep it real, folks. Man, we got to get a handle on this thing because the money's not coming, D.
We are the help we've been waiting for.
If you waiting on the state government, the federal government, they don't care. We got a man in the White House that's dealing with mental illness, and he is the most, I think, naive person when it comes to who he is and what he has been. So the money's not coming. They don't care. They do not care. You know, I was at a one-day thing on health just this past week, and I'm not going to say her name, but she was up giving a presentation, and she was giving out some numbers. And there in this audience were probably, it was 90, at least 98% white, 2% black, 4 or 5 black people in there. I was one of them. And she gave out a statistic, and I'm trying to recall exactly, but it was 3 areas. It was talking about 3 areas where white people are dying the most, and it was alcohol abuse, it was drug abuse, and it was one other I can't recall.
Opioid.
Well, we know that's high up there too, but her words were strange. She looked out at that audience, D, and she said, "This is us. This is us." And I thought,
am I in the wrong meeting?
What is interesting about this is that we have been saying that for generations. With the crack epidemic, with the war on drugs, with being locked up simply for having residue in a marijuana pipe, for getting a felony like it is in Wisconsin. You get caught with a joint, the second time you get caught is a felony with marijuana, no matter how small the amount is. We have been saying this for generations. This is us. And I said that after the meeting. I said, but so funny is now everybody wants to pay attention because it is you who is suffering now. Mental illness among the poor. Oh my God, man. Has been for generations a problem in the black community. But there's a different segment now. Suburbia. Right?
Reached out and touched you.
They have it all, right? They're turning to drugs because of their depression, because of their adverse childhood experiences. They too are cutting themselves. But this is us. This is all of us. And I'm glad that some folks are recognizing that, but they're recognizing it. You know, she didn't say this is all of us. She said this is us. She excluded the black people. When we continue, even when you turn to the problem, you exclude us. Wow. This is, folks, we're all dealing with this. And as I mentioned before, it's about, doing this introspective view.
So let me get to some, Mike, what are some things that you do to maintain mental wellness?
Well, man, I'm a musician. Music is therapy for me. I'm a writer. Writing is therapy to me. I write down a lot of my thoughts. When I'm dealing with depression, I like to get it out through my writings. I sit outside a lot. I like to be in nature. Of course, I work out. Try to burn off that sort of stress level. But I try to be aware, of what I'm going through, man. And I like to, those who I can trust, which are few and far between. I lay out my dirty laundry, man. I'm trying to be a mystery to the world, not to those who are in my circle,
And that's deep.
You know what I'm saying?
That's deep.
That's what I'm trying to be. What about you, brother?
Man, I have some releases of my own. I just picked up the guitar last year, so that's been a very good therapeutic tool for me. Just being able to open up new brain pathways, challenge the mind to do something new. I also like to write. I don't always enjoy it. It's kind of like that, like you said, that self-reflection can sometimes be challenging. But I think it's very necessary to in some degree deal with yourself. So that's something that working out martial arts. I think having a balance of activities, support systems, people that you can rely on that are going to hold you accountable for your mental health is definitely something to
seek help.
Yeah,
professional help if you need it. Don't be ashamed. Any other resources you want to talk about?
You go out to the mentalhealth.gov website. There's plenty of resources out there just to get you going in the right direction. There are also social media supports. I remember seeing a hashtag, "Are you good, man?" and "Are you good, sis?" Just to link people to resources and to give encouraging words to brothers and sisters out there who are going through things in the daily struggles of life. But there's also just little things we can do to help boost our mental health each day. Start get enough sleep. Diet is critical. What you're putting into your body. Drinks lots of water. Stay positive. Get around positive people. Develop coping skills to have a bag of tools you can use for when you're dealing with different issues. Because they all won't come the same or at the same time. So the more ready you are, the better prepared you are, the better you can handle the things that are coming your way.
Absolutely. Great show, man. Great show, folks. This is 98, moving toward 100. But this was a great show.
In Oklahoma City, go on down to the Tim Center. Sustainable family support.
Give out the address on that. Give out the phone number.
Give me just I don't
look for that.
Just a second.
Well, I tell you what we'll do. We'll post it on the Facebook page. Post a little something about what they do. And I've been down there. It's a wonderful facility. And we all deal with it. Be strong. Do not be ashamed. Come out of the shadows, stand up, guess what? You may have the disease, but the disease does not have you. Because as always, history will speak of us. Somewhere in the distant future, a scribe will reach down deep into the archives of our time. And what will she find? Will she discover that we overcame our differences? Will she find that out of many we became one? Or will she find that we solved nothing and remain a divided peoples? Yes,
history will speak of us.
Difference if we try. We can beat the change that's in our lives. All we gotta do is work together. We gotta raise our children better. We gotta stop the hate, and spread the love.
One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. One mic, one voice. You can change the world, it's your choice. Your choice.
Today's broadcast is being brought to you by Blacken Studios. To learn more about Blacken Studios, please visit them at blackenstudios.com or visit them on their Facebook page, Blacken Studios. Today's broadcast is also being brought to you by Perry Publishing and Broadcasting. To learn more about Perry Publishing and Broadcasting, please visit their website at perrypublishingandbroadcasting.net. The opinions of the One Mic, One Voice show do not reflect the views of Blacken Studios or Perry Publishing and Broadcasting. Thank you for downloading the One Mic, One Voice show.